Hello and welcome to Guerrilla Discipleship. I'm Tim Parker. Tim Parker, your host. We're so excited to have you tune in for this episode. Unfortunately, Pastor Kevin cannot meet us and be here today, but we want to continue to do kind of this one standalone podcast video for you real quick in lieu before we start another series. And this one is titled How to Be Spiritually Obvious with Difficult People. As you know, Guerrilla Discipleship is all about making disciples and making disciples who make disciples who make disciples. We often talk about being spiritually obvious and the importance of being spiritually obvious without being spiritually obnoxious. But today I was talking to two lovely ladies at our welcome desk, and I said, hey, what's something that you think we should talk about? What's something you think that we should address that maybe we don't always talk about? And they kind of more or less said, how to be spiritually obvious with difficult people. Now, I use that term difficult people relatively loosely because I think we all know what a difficult person is. I was originally going to call this a tough, someone who's maybe like a tough nut to crack or a tough cookie to crumble, but that didn't quite go the same, right? We all have these difficult people in our life, whether you want to admit it or not, that are just, I don't know, hard to work with. And there's so many different reasons why. Maybe they're like neighbors who continually blow their leaves in our yard. Maybe there's someone who has such a similar personality to us in our family, or a friend or a colleague that you just maybe don't like their personality, or they don't like your personality. There's these people that we just maybe seemingly just can't get along with, that you maybe want to get along with, but there's just some sort of clash. It could be someone who's maybe just not tough for others to get along with, but for whatever reason, you just seemingly can't break through, or you're just always offending them, or they're always offending you. There's tons of different reasons why there's difficult people. I know I could give you tons of different stories of people who've been difficult in my life, and I'm sure many of you could maybe say that I'm the difficult person in your life, but I hope not. And how do you be spiritually obvious to people that are hard to love maybe? Maybe they're hard-hearted for many different reasons. In church language, we often call them EGR. It's just not necessarily a nice word, but it stands for extra grace required. People that just take a little bit more graciousness out of you. They're just a little bit harder to love. You just have to kind of be a little more patient with them. They're annoying you, or they embody an idea or a principle or a lifestyle that just maybe makes your blood boil, or maybe it's the way they dress or they look or their inflection. For whatever reason, it's just hard to connect with. There's also another word called a Tim, T-I-M, not this Tim, but someone who is a thorn in my side, someone who just continually maybe is your nemesis at work, or someone who's on your kid's soccer team who you just hate with every fiber of your being and you don't know why. That's not healthy. That's not good. Their world does have difficult people, but that shouldn't keep you from being spiritually obvious with them and to them. I know sometimes it can be a personality clash. Sometimes it can be because you have a rough history with them, especially if they're a family member, whether it's a grandparent or a child, or maybe sometimes they're just an all-around bitter, angry person. Those people that you sometimes encounter, hopefully they're not you, and you say, hey, good morning, and they look at you and go, what's so good about it, right? That's the kind of difficult person we're talking about. How do we bring and show Jesus to those people? Because being around them or being near them sometimes is almost unbearable, and we don't even want to be around them, but we know that we're called to make disciples to everyone, everywhere, at every place and time. And so how do we encounter those people that maybe we want to run from, those people who maybe don't bring the best out of us, those people that we want to show God's grace to, but it's just so hard for some reason or another? How do we do that? And so we want to encourage you, first off, to be spiritually obvious to everyone at all places at all times, regardless of whether it's tough or not. But here's the reason why we should try. I know there's some of you going, why even try? Maybe someone else can reach them. Maybe it's not me. I can love everyone, but I can't love fill in the blank, that person or that kind of person. Here's why you should try. Here's something that I've come to know as a pastor. Those with the hardest shell often have the softest center. Those with the hardest shell often have the softest center. What do I mean by that? Those who are just really like hard on the outside. I've had a few family relatives like that who are just walls up, maybe a little bit angry or bitter, not willing to be vulnerable, maybe short with you or angry or not really revealing their stuff, maybe picking on you or being rude to you or whatever it is. Those people who maybe are kind of hard and mean and tough and gruff on the outside, from my personal experience working with people and working in the church, those people often have the softest, creamiest inside. And what I mean by that is that they have that soft exterior shell because they've been hurt, they've been burnt, they've been in a really bad spot, and they've never fully healed. And so they put up those walls. They act like a tough guy or a tough woman to kind of keep people away because they've been hurt so many times. And the softest inside means that sometimes the root of the gospel or the seeds that we plant or the seeds that we water can maybe actually take better root in the difficult people, that they actually push people away. And so if you continue to lean into them, not push into them or push them over, if you continue to be spiritually obvious to them and break through that shell, or maybe they have a come to Jesus moment and their shell is opened up, that sometimes they can actually make the best evangelists. They can make the best people who share the gospel. They can be sometimes some of the strongest and healthiest Christians after they let their walls come down, but it's not necessarily easy. Now, I want to encourage you to continue to love difficult people or the thorns in your sides or the extra grace required people, because Jesus often loved those who were tough to love. And maybe that's kind of a wide stance, but Jesus loved people in his time that those were tough to love. I bet if you travel back 2,000 years ago, when Jesus was healing lepers, people would say, a leper's kind of tough to love. They're not difficult maybe because of their personality, but they're tough to love because we keep them physically distant from us. And yet Jesus loved those. There's people who are also difficult to love, right? Jesus often surrounded himself with tax collectors. And for moral reasons, many of the people who lived with Jesus at the same time he did thought it was morally reprehensible to be surrounded by tax collectors who were seemingly anti-Israel, pro-Roman occupation, and were known for stealing their money. And so many people would have called Matthew in the Bible, who was also owned by Levi, which is also the book of Matthew, the author of it, would have called him maybe a difficult person. Yet Jesus told Matthew, hey, come and follow me. He said, come follow me, to someone who was very difficult, and he loved those. He even loved people who had less than reputable reputations, right? The lady at the woman at the well who had 5 different husbands, and the one that she was living with currently when Jesus met her wasn't her husband. Jesus had no problem hanging out with her, asking her for water. No problem being surrounded with her, but I bet if you ask other Samaritans in that village, they would have said, that's a difficult person. She stole my husband. She stole my son, right? She's not someone I want to be around because of her personality or her disposition, or she's someone I can't trust. And so no one brought the gospel to her except Jesus, because Jesus had no problem being surrounded by people like that. Right? I think in some ways, difficult people maybe even need the gospel more than those who don't. Granted, we all need the gospel equally, but those who are difficult, I think, are difficult for a reason, or difficult for a season. There's something going on spiritually and mentally, maybe even physically, that is why they're difficult. Or maybe they're difficult just for you because there's something going on in your life that you need to wrestle with and you need to struggle with. And so God calls us to wrestle with those difficult people. In fact, this kind of goes along with when Jesus was, I think, at a Pharisee's house, and he's meeting with them and eating dinner, and a woman comes up who is basically a prostitute or a recovering prostitute and starts wiping Jesus' feet with her hair and pouring perfume on it. And the Pharisee's like, if you knew who that woman was, you wouldn't be letting her do that, right? And Jesus more or less says, she has a lot more to be forgiven for, and so that's why she's so grateful. And so sometimes difficult people have more to be forgiven for, more to wrestle with, or more healing, or more freedom that they need. And so maybe we shouldn't run away from people who get under our skin, but we should lean into them. Of course, I want you to have healthy boundaries. I don't want you to be obsessed with putting yourself around people who are harmful to you or harmful to your mental health or harmful to your spiritual or emotional or physical health. That's not the case. But what I want to encourage you is to not be afraid of being spiritually obvious with them. And not obnoxious, but being spiritually obvious with them. Here's some advice for you. I want to encourage you to love them anyways. So if their dog poops on your lawn, love them anyways. If they never care or ask about how you're doing or how you're feeling, love them anyways. If they're always grumpy, always angry, never happy, never smiling, love them anyways. If they have a different lifestyle than what you condone or believe in, if they have an addiction that just completely drive you nuts and drive you wild, don't enable them, but love them anyways. I want to encourage you to kill them with kindness. Don't actually kill them, but continue to show God's agape, never-ending love on them, and continue to just love on them and hoping and praying that something will break through. You may not be the one that breaks through. You may not be the one who plants the seed or who waters it, but don't be the one to run away from it either. Don't shy away from the opportunities for boldness God puts in your life. Here's another thing. Often difficult people are difficult because they just seem so mean and so angry, or they seem so spiteful or subtle against you. And the best way to show Christ to them is to not repay evil with evil. A lot of times they are acting evil or acting mean or acting angry towards you because they want you to be the same back to them. And so when you act different, you are being spiritually obvious. When they're angry, when they're mean, when they cheat and you don't, they think there's something different, something wrong with you, and you actually show them Jesus. I'll encourage you with these difficult people, don't force relationships. If it's not meant to be, don't completely go out of your way to be friends with the grumpy old me neighbor. If it's not natural, right? There's a time and a place, but if God's leading you away from someone who is toxic or someone who is harmful, don't force these relationships and don't force yourself into them if it's going to be harmful. Know that it's okay to take them in doses. Like, man, that person just really eat me up. Like, I can't go to that relative's house again for a couple months. Okay, pray about it. Maybe text them, call them, and wait for the next opportunity for you to be spiritually obvious. And who knows, maybe they'll even contact you with an issue or a problem, or maybe to brag or rub something in your face. And that just gives you another opportunity to show them grace and show them love. I encourage you, for difficult people, if you know you're going to encounter them, please, please, please pray before you encounter them. Prayer is this energy that a lot of times we leave left on the table if we don't tap into that power of prayer. So pray that it changes you and it changes them. And I can tell you, if you pray before you encounter these difficult people, that a lot of times the situations are going to go way better than you ever thought they would. And second, or maybe not second, I guess last I have here is don't give up. I don't think God ever gives up on people. I don't think he's like, you know what? I've shared the gospel with him 5 times. I've done this so many times. I'm just going to turn my back on him. I don't think our God is a God who gives up. Our God is relentless in pursuing us and calling us back to him. And if we're supposed to embody God, if we're supposed to embody Jesus and the Holy Spirit to others, don't ever give up on someone. There might be a time to take a break, right? There's things about boundaries, but don't ever give up and say, only God can save them now, right? God's the only one that could have saved them to begin with. And here's one of my quotes that while I was kind of researching this and praying about this, that I came up with this, is this: you don't have to be the one to save them. Just don't be the one who didn't show them Jesus. So you don't have to be the person that makes them repent and does a discovery Bible study with them or make them say this in this prayer. You don't have to be that one. And that doesn't even have to be your goal with anyone that you're doing relational evangelism with, that you're pouring into and doing life with. Just don't be the one that says that they can go, see, that person says they're a Christian and they're a hypocrite. See, that person, they were mean to me, and if they're a Christian, they're mean, I don't want to be. Don't give someone a reason not to be a follower. If you mess up, apologize. If you say something you don't mean, ask for forgiveness. I'm not asking or telling you to be perfect around difficult people. You will mess up. It won't be easy. I have difficult people, believe it or not, in my life. I'm a friendly, outgoing guy who seemingly gets along with anyone. I gotta have a conversation with the wall. But there's still times where I have tough times showing grace, tough times being patient, tough times biting my lip, and I have to repent. I have to apologize because I want to show Christ and I want to show Jesus to them. So continue to be spiritually obvious. Don't avoid people who are difficult. We all have difficult people. Sometimes we actually need to be praying more for them instead of running away from them. But I want to encourage you this week as you watch this, don't drop that difficult person's name in the comments below. That's not cool. That's not acceptable. Hopefully pray that you're not that difficult person. That wouldn't be good either if you're trying to be a disciple maker or spiritually obvious. But I want you to pray for opportunities to speak truth and speak love and be spiritually obvious into a difficult person's life. So maybe you say, God, who's a difficult person that I should reach out to now? That could be your prayer. Your prayer could also be, God, I know I'm maybe going to encounter a difficult person this week. Help me to be gracious with them. Whatever it is, pray for an encounter with a difficult person and pray that you will be spiritually obvious with them. And we want to hear those stories in the comments below. We're challenging you to do that. So my name's Tim. Again, if you have any questions, you can like, comment, share. You can also ask the questions in the comments. You can also email me at tparker@oakdale.church. Again, tparker@oakdale.church. And we want to encourage you to not give up on doing what is good. For at the end, as you continue to persevere, you will see the prize and that God will be with you every step of the way. Take care.